Hi, y'all. It's Bridget Cutshaw with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Jill Johnson, and Jill and I met virtually online when COVID started on a women's speaking summit. And Jill is she lives in Minneapolis, and hopefully I said that right, but she is a
Mhm.
business consultant, and her specialty is in business strategy and analytics. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Jill, if you can explain a little bit more what you do.
Sure. So I'm a management consultant. I've been in the practice of consulting for, I shouldn't admit, but over 3 decades. I was a child savant, and but I come out of the old school CPA consulting arena. So I have a master's degree in business administration, and I'm a fourth generation entrepreneur. And my first paid job was when I was 12 years old, and so I had a lot of really deep and rich experience. And so after I finished my MBA, I embarked on a career in consulting and haven't looked back. Have had the privilege of working with clients across the United States, as well as clients from Europe and Asia. And I'm also an author. Written several books. My most recent one has been sold now in 5 continents. I'm so
Wow.
excited about that. And so, making an impact in a bigger way. And I'm also a professional speaker and member of the National Speakers Association, and I'm a certified virtual presenter as well. So lots of new and different things, and it was such a great privilege to meet you when we were we weren't on the same panel, but we were part of
Right.
that same group of for the Professional Speakers Summit, which was a great event, and I thoroughly enjoyed being part of it, and particularly enjoyed the opportunity to meet the other professional speakers like you from around the world, who have different insights and different skill sets and so many different things to offer. And so it was great fun to find new ways to connect.
And that's really what it's about, I think, to continue learning, right? It doesn't matter what our background is. We learn from each other and connecting,
Exactly.
and we would not have met if hadn't been involved with this online. I guess it was called an online summit, right? So yeah, it's how we're all,
Professional Speakers Summit.
sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
It
exactly.
it's
No,
we're all just trying to adjust to all this stuff, and everybody's got we're trying to find our new normal. And I think businesses have been affected in different ways than people. I don't know, we're all affected. And you're probably like me, I'm older, right? In my mid 50s. And so I don't have to deal with the younger kid situation being in school. I just can't imagine that. Uh,
yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of clients who have team members who are, juggling the kids, or, conversely, if they have aging parents,
right,
and,
that's true. Yes.
just the complexities of the realities that we've been in for the last, 5 or 6 months. It's created stresses no matter what your current circumstance may be. And,
Right.
you may be all that, and with COVID, and the responses to COVID have really required some flexibility and persistence, and frankly resilience.
Correct.
um, you know
Right.
I think that a lot of people are really struggling because they're depleted. I mean, they're just tired, and you can't plan when you're tired and the circumstances are uncertain. And so we've been working with people and talking offline with folk about what to do with when your strategies, you don't feel like you can rely on your strategies. What I always bring people back is, it's not so much the strategies that need to change, it's your tactical execution of how you achieve your strategic goals. And so for a lot of us, this whole world of going online and going virtual has been the tactical response to this shift. And when I start to break it down for people like that, they go, oh, and it doesn't feel as overwhelming,
Right.
because you can change a tactic. It requires some training. I mean, that's frankly one of the things that I've had to do during this period of time, is I've had to up my technical game. And that meant learning and putting myself into crazy new situations. So that's why I participated in the Professional Speaker Summit. It was something new and different, and it incorporated the virtual world. And for me, it was so great because I found out I really enjoyed it. And more importantly, it connected me to people all around the world. I mean, I made, probably 60 new connections that were from other countries. And for
Right.
me, that was like, wow, that was the super bonus. And, I had another 40 that were in the States. So, it was 100 new people that I would never have connected with if I had not taken that risk to
Right.
just step into the void, if you will, and trust that I have skills that I can rely on, and now it's just learning how to use and navigate in a slightly different arena.
Different way. And this, right. And we just made these connections. You took that risk that you never would have had before. And me too. I've used Zoom before, but never as much as I have now. And
You
right,
and you
it's
and everybody else.
right. I mean, I've used it. So like I want to make sure that I stay in contact with my clients too, because a lot of them are working remotely, right? So you have to
Exactly.
wait to connect, not just
Exactly.
on the phone or text, but just to see each other's faces. I think that's why it's been helpful. And it's just amazing. Yeah, life always changes. We have to learn how to adapt. And I think one of them is uh, lacking confidence too. And so that's kind of why I'm bringing up your book. It's compounding your
Yeah.
confidence, right? Can you like touch on that a little bit and what prompted you to even write this?
Well, yeah. I mean, people are like, Jill, you're a business strategy consultant. Why on earth would you write a book about confidence? And it's because both what gets organizations into strategic trouble, which is when they need to bring in somebody like me, is because they've lost confidence in their ability to assess the circumstances in an objective situation or an objective manner, or they've lost confidence in their team, or the board's lost confidence in them and their ability. They're seeing signs like revenues are off, or staff members are leaving, and so they're rotating through people, and there are symptoms of problems coming through, and everybody's just overwhelmed. But more importantly, it's a leadership development skill. So as
Right,
I go through and work with C-suite leaders, it's confidence that gets them into those rooms, but more importantly, it's confidence that keeps them there and helps to continue to move them to greater degrees of influence. And so as I'm reaching the hand backward, the book was based off of a speech that I did that was one of those, as a speaker, it's those life moments where you nail and land every story. The audience is laughing all the way through, and you're connecting in such a deep and resilient and impactful way. And fortunately, we had captured the recording, so the first draft of the book was actually the transcription of the speech, and
okay,
it was really about passing the hand back to others who haven't had the privilege yet of being in those executive suites like I have, who've had, I come from nothing and nowhere. And so, for little Jill Johnson from Hudson, Wisconsin, to be able to navigate to boardrooms with, Fortune 100 executives and CEOs, or sophisticated nonprofit leaders, and have an impact that, I've impacted over $4 billion worth of business decisions over the years, uninflated, since I've been in consulting. You don't do that unless you have the confidence to be able to present your ideas in a way that resonate with the people in the room, that they see and understand and trust you, and trust that you have the right ideas to move them through the fog. And for me, it was a way to help it break it down for the next generations coming behind, and for those who are new to the C-suite, that it's just another skill. And if you label it as something like that, and you talk in the book, I talk about there's this power of three, and it's progressions. And so how you start at a new level of mastery. So if you've gotten a promotion, you're in a new level of mastery. No one expects you to know everything at that level day one. And if you can take some of the pressure off if you acknowledge that you're in a learning curve, not I'm going to fake it till I make it. And
right.
that BS imposter thing that people always tell you, oh, just fake it, you'll be fine. Like, no, give yourself a little grace to say you're new. Don't jump in and try and tell act like you do know it all when you and everybody else know you don't. And give yourself the grace to work on the skills that you need to emerge fully in that level of leadership that you're in. And the second part of is after progressions, it's practice. And so how you find arenas where you can practice your new skills. So, if it's learning how to talk via video to thousands of people around the world, then you have to practice it
Right.
in order to have the camera savvy, to know where to look, to be engaging, to be personable, and to keep your head together with all the technology going on around you to get to the points that you wanted to make. And that third part is the presentation. And it's how you bring yourself. It's how you share your messages and ideas. And so if you take all three of those together, it really becomes a robust way for people to begin to set their confidence blueprint, if you will, for how they're going to take control of building their confidence. And it's a series of deep self-assessment. It's about identifying the learning that you need. It's finding the coaches, advisors, and resources that you need to move you through those next levels of learning and mastery, and making it something that's intentional, not something that you just go, oh, I wish I was more confident. Well,
Right.
wishing isn't a strategy and or a tactic that will get you anywhere. And so it's about taking control and taking responsibility. And so I was able to put that in a book that people find very engaging and very illuminating, because I share stories of the things that worked and didn't work, and how I went from Bobby Johnson's little girl to 2 business halls of fame by the time I
Right.
was in my mid 50s. And that just doesn't happen by accident. It happens with intention. And we have a new book coming out soon called Career Confidence. And what we did is we went back through the entire first book, because I was getting feedback from people that said, Jill, I wish there was a more succinct way to take all of the learning that you provide. And so we went through, we wiped out all the stories, anything that wasn't advice. And it was so chock full in the original book. We had enough content to create another book out of that. And it's a tip book. So it's micro chunks of advice around the key themes about how to build your career confidence. And we'll be releasing it shortly. We also
Oh,
have a
wow.
companion workbook that's now out. And it's really about helping you to take that deeper dive. You can do it yourself, or even better, you can work through some of that with a coach or with a small peer group. And I think it's all about finding ways to take power back. And that really leads into, I think, the issues of confidence that we face now in this very uncertain time that we're in as
Right.
well.
It it's it's just so weird. And I think a lot of people have or lack confidence because they have fear, which we don't know what that's rooted in. Oh, is that the
Yeah,
the right word? And
exactly. Yeah.
right, yeah, and I think it's good to have these support documents and have support groups to help each other. And I think that's what I learned from this summit, supporting each other, because we're all
Hmm.
going through it but in a different manner.
Right.
And
Well, and go ahead.
no, yeah, you go ahead. I forgot already.
Well, no, I think you're absolutely right. And one of the most powerful things that we can do, and people are so uncertain right now. And so I always tell people, when you're in that layer of uncertainty, break it down into very small microbites that you can
Right,
control. And so you can't control what the government's doing. You can't control what your customers are doing. You can't control what your vendors are doing, but you can control what you do
right,
today, in this hour, or in this minute. And a lot of it, and we talk about it in the book, is we get triggered. And so you're talking about fears. Triggers is a really big piece of what leads into those challenges. And if you can identify why this feels so familiar, whatever this is for you, and go back and go, oh my gosh, that was when, this is what I felt like when my mother died, or this is what I felt like when I got yelled at by the teacher in second grade and I was so embarrassed in front of my peers. If you can label the source of the trigger, then you have a more impactful and intentional ability to craft your mindset to be able to move forward. And it might be as simple as a mantra that says, then is not now, then is not now, then is not now. And so it becomes a
Right.
self-fulfilling psychological reset, if you will, that can be very powerful. And people ask me all the time, Jill, when you go into a boardroom, you feel it seems like you just got it all together and you're all on. I'm like, well, first of all, yeah, but but the reality is it's not always that way. But I do know when I go into those rooms where I'm often making recommendations about millions of dollars that they're going to have to invest to solve a problem. And I have done so much advanced preparation. My preparation and the practice that I have of, sometimes I'll practice a presentation many times before I'll go in their room. And I'm thinking about all the different people who are going to be there and who might be a disruptor and who might be somebody who tries to undercut that because they have a stake in not changing. And so that I have practiced my responses and I've practiced how I'm going to hold myself and I've practiced all of those things so that by the time I get into that presentation of the moment, I can't control them, but I'm in command of my responses to
Right.
their action. And it's not always easy and pretty, and it's particularly as you move to some of those higher levels, the games and the stakes are very different. But I trust myself, and I know that the only North Star I ever have with my client is to do what's right by them and right for their customer.
Do the
And if
right
I can
thing.
keep those as my North Star, then everything else really folds in, and you can help people understand how it fits together and why it's the right way to go. And my track record's pretty good. I have a pretty pretty good success rate, but you still have those things that come at you. And the other part that I tell people is, as you build that confidence over time, one of the things that happens is, I've moved through many many layers of mastery. And so I'll have spent time where I'm mastering analytical skills, and then I'm mastering my writing skills, and then I'm mastering my professional speaking skills, and there are many other elements. Some days I'm mastering a sales cycle, some days I'm mastering the art of proposal writing, some days I'm mastering the art of influential communication, I'm mastering complex interview skills and intentional interviewing, and how does that all work in. All of those things are resources and tools that at the end of the day get me to where I need to be with a client. But they didn't just happen today.
Right.
It's over a very long and intentionally developed arc of experiences that I've created for myself for my learning, so that by the time you get in, that's the difference between an amateur and a professional. A professional really works on and hones all those different details and aspects. And I'm constantly in learning mode. I learned from, I've had 12 interns that have worked for my business over the last several years. I learned from every single one of them.
Awesome.
And so, I coach and mentor them, but they coach and mentor me, even though they don't always know that that's what they're doing. But when you open up the experiences that you can have and bring to the table, it just sets you apart. And I think so many people just, they do the hand waving thing and, oh, there's nothing I can do. I came from humble beginnings and, I'll never get where I want to be. Well, maybe you'll never get fully to where you've envisioned you want to be, but you'll get a heck of a lot further than if you had no destination in mind. And so why not dream big and then do the disciplined work that it will take to hone the skill sets that you need. And at each level, they're different. And so it's a matter of, putting yourself in those uncomfortable positions and learning your way through it, if you will. I heard that on a call I was on the other day, and I'm like, I like that. I'm going to steal
Learning
that.
your way through it.
Learning your way through it. And
Yeah.
that's what we're doing through this crazy time that we're in now, we're learning our way through it. And the world in, next year will be very different than the world is that we're in today. And, we have all the things that we're learning from this experience that we'll now bring in. And if you can use your resilience as a pivot to help building that confidence in yourself, you're golden. So
One thing I was thinking about while you were talking about all these things that you're learning and mastering, what do you get it mostly from online classes or reading books? Or I just was curious, what is your go-to first method when you want to learn something?
For me, learning to read was the most powerful, game-changing experience of my life. I was reading at 3. I was a weird little kid, and but books opened up the world for me. But today we have so many different ways that we can access information that are different than when I was young. And so I listen to podcasts. I look at YouTube videos.
Uh-huh.
I do webinars and classes. In fact, my goal through this entire pandemic experience has been to try and do at least one online learning component every single day of the work week. And so some days I do 2, so it's not every single day.
Right.
But it evens itself out. And and I have different topics that catch my attention. One, I'm a graduate of the FBI Citizens Academy, because there are so many different circumstances that have the ability to impact business, that have a criminal element, we shall say. And so for me, one day I might be watching a webinar on cybersecurity, and the next day I'm watching a webinar on active shooter. And all of those things we hope never happen, but it's about preparing for the worst case scenario
Right.
that allows you to navigate in the new norm. And then some days I'm doing a webinar on, or a master's class on online course development, which is something that I've been very interested in doing.
Right.
And then I'll watch participate in group discussions about how to do better on video, and learning and trying to master that. And then I'll go on and I'll be watching a workshop on a selling workshop on something else. And so I try and make it very eclectic, because I think if we have only one go-to or only one source of information, we don't stimulate enough areas of our brain and our subconscious thought. And so I'm feeding in all sorts of different things, because I know that the clients that I work with have many nuances to the circumstances that they're dealing with and they're struggling with. So for me, the more eclectic I can make that experience, the better. I read a lot of nonfiction. Biographies are among my favorite. And for anybody who's experiencing any self-doubt right now, trust me, every person who put a ding in the universe, who made a change in the world, who invented something new or special or was a game changer, even if it was just in their local community, experienced moments of self-doubt. And they were absolutely uncertain as they were moving through whatever ultimately became the apex of their level of impact. As they moved through it, they were completely uncertain if they mattered, if it was going to mean anything to anybody. And it wasn't until they got through on the other side, or frankly, even after they were long gone, that the essence of what they crafted or created or brought to their circumstance mattered. And so, for anybody who's having a moment of self-doubt, it's expected. And that's where having real clarity about who you are and how you want to be in this world, how real, if you will, you want to be, really is the game changer. And you can have impact at so many different levels. And that's, I strive to have impact every day. And it might be just as simple as reaching out to somebody who's having a bad day on Facebook, and I private message. I never ever post on their main feed,
Right.
and I private message to talk with them. And sometimes it's a young student that's been on a video call that I've done that reaches out to connect on LinkedIn, and I can tell on their LinkedIn profile they haven't got a job. So I'll say, hey, let's do a call, and I want to get to know you a little bit better. And through the course of that call, I'm able to give them some new insights about their job search. And they're like, how did you even know that? And I'm like, I'm pretty wicked good at what I do. I read between the lines
Right.
pretty
You
well.
look at all the angles of what, where they're reaching out to you, and in between the lines.
Well, and then what that allows me to do is then I'm able to offload some wisdom that gives them some encouragement. I graduated from, college when there were no jobs and, especially for women in business. And, I know what it's like to have to try and navigate that full uncertainty that their future is never going to happen. And, it's all over before it's even begun. And when you can relate to people in that way, they don't feel so alone. And I find that's really the richest thing. It was so weird now because I get messages back from people, random, outreach emails or messages on LinkedIn or other social media. Jill, I don't know if you remember, but in 2009, you said such and such. And I'm like, okay, I don't remember the conversation at all. I drop my pixie dust and I move on.
Right.
But for them, it was the pixie dust that was transformative. And so, for me, I know that those small moments matter as much as any kind of big impact that you might have. And so, for me, that's how I keep things real, and I'm able to be, in that moment of giving and connecting and trying to matter and make a difference. And just trusting that wisdom that can come through will be valuable for the people who need to hear it. And not all the time. I mean, there's some haters out
Right.
there, and
Right.
like, well, they're not my tribe, but I've had to lick my wounds for half an hour or so before I can get to that mental space.
Well, I think what you were explaining is a really good example of leadership. Good leadership is about being generous, and
Mm,
sometimes they can't always be generous with time a lot, but just little bits, like you said, are just so helpful, and you just won't believe what have an impact on somebody down the road later. Like you said, it could be 10 years later, and I think that's really helpful. But how you're explaining that, and that to me is about what leadership is about: being or doing the right thing in the right moment. If we don't, a lot of people say they don't know what the right thing is, but they really truly do deep down. You know what I'm saying?
they just don't want to do it. They
Correct.
don't want to do it because it might be hard.
Yes.
I'm notorious for my candor, and so I can whack you up to both
Good.
sides of your head in the nicest possible way, but I say the things that need to be said.
Good.
That's one of my superpowers. And it's startling to people often because in many corporate arenas and environments, you're punished for speaking the truth. And
Yes.
it's one of the reasons I'm very, very selective about the clients that I work with. I need to be in an environment, as much of an environment where they know they need the truth in order to be able to move forward. Because when we're all looking at things from a realistic point of view, I always say, people say, Jill, what C level are you? And I'm like, I'm the CRO, the Chief Reality Officer. And,
I got to write that
and,
down.
yeah, there's a book in there somewhere, I'm sure. And what happens is, you know, organizations get what they incentivize. Let me say that one again. You
Yes.
get what you incentivize.
Yes.
So if you incentivize people to not tell you hard things because they've seen their peers get shamed or demeaned or fired, for alerting management or key leadership about something that's very difficult, they're not going to go out on a limb to tell you anything. And it it creates barriers to getting that reality. And most often when I'm brought in to a complex business situation, whether it's a business enterprise or a not-for-profit or a trade association, I work in the service sector. What often happens is that it's not that anything that people there did is wrong. It's that the world around them has shifted and changed. And they've been so internally focused on operations and service delivery that they've missed the signs from the marketplace. And so when we're doing competitor intelligence and demographic analysis and really complex market research to understand what's shifting and changing, and then looking at the market forces that are influencing survival of enterprise. I mean, we've had two black swans in this environment that we've had during COVID. One has been the health crisis that we've had, and the second component has been the financial crisis. And so the
Right.
two have intertwined in a way that's immensely impactful. And some businesses were prepared for a rainy day. They'll be able to weather the storm, and when things settle down a little bit, they'll be able to continue to retool their tactics. They'll adapt and learn from what they saw worked really well during this experience, and then they'll be able to bring that forward to whatever new incarnation they're going to have. And one of the next books that I'm working on is about enduring enterprises and what it takes to build an enterprise that stands the test of time. And I've studied a variety of organizations and businesses over many, many years. And, there are 8 characteristics and strategies that those businesses and organizations deploy that really are the difference between short-term versus long-term survival.
Right.
And it all comes back to research and insight and information, and then adapting to the evolving new circumstance. And you can't do that if you're not confident,
Right.
and that you've created as many underpinnings as you can, whether it's you found a collaboration partner, or you've learned that new skill, or whatever it might be. You've got money in the bank. People always ask me, Jill, what's the best business advice you would give? And my answer is always, don't spend all your cash. If you have a really, really great year, 1 year, save quite a bit of it,
Right.
because there will be a year when it's not so good. And we're seeing that stressor come through right now, where
Yeah.
people weren't prepared to be struggling for 6, 8, 9 months, and they don't have the financial reserves that will allow them to be able to weather that. And so what I tell people is, once you get through this, I want you to go back and take a look at the things that created distress for you in this environment, and what can you prepare differently going forward. So if money was a major stressor for you during this cycle, then when we get back and you kind of got your feet back under you, now what are you going to do to set up a savings plan? What are you going to do
Right.
to make sure that you've got additional resources? I want you to go through all of your, everybody's got, all those automatic credit card charges that we have. When was the last time anybody really looked at all of those and
Subscriptions.
said, have I oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and I preached this, and when this all hit, I went back and I was like, well, okay, there's a $450 a year expenditure that, because it only comes through once a year.
Hmm.
It's not regular.
Right.
And I caught it this time before it re-hit. And, of course they wanted to, oh, we'll give you 6 months for free. I'm like, look, go back and look. I haven't used your service in 3 years. I really don't think
It's not
I'm going
worth
to
it.
change in a
Correct.
couple months. So yeah, and they didn't push back too hard, but yet those are things, again, it's control. And I was confident with the comeback because I knew they were going to come back. I knew that, and I had a little note in front of me that says say no. And so I just kept saying no, and I just want this ended. And they're like, okay, fine. And worst thing that can happen is when you ask is that somebody can say no. And how shameful is that really? And sometimes it stings, but it's not the end of the world.
Saying no nicely is the best way to do it, right? As nice as you
Oh,
can.
yeah. Well, and even not so nicely. It's still, if
Right.
somebody says no to you, it
Don't push. Yeah.
okay, your loss. That
Yes.
was my mother's advice about guys was, well, there's always another fish in the sea. Well, there's always another client in the sea. I get told no all the time
Right.
by organizations who have, what I've proposed for them is exactly what they need and it would really benefit them. But there are many decision makers that are involved in those sales decisions. And
Yes.
sometimes you just can't get past one particular person, or the price point wasn't a fit, and they didn't need it as at deep a level that they said to me that I wrote the proposal to. So I got smart over the years. Now I often will write multi-layered proposals. So there's a low ball, not
Right.
very in-depth, and then comprehensive. And, it's a way to help them see, but I always try and get the budget insight out, and don't always get it, but, I ask. And, sometimes the same thing happens as a professional speaker. And, they're looking at the totality of the meeting or the event that they're creating, and they're trying to envision how I would fit into that portfolio.
Right.
And they'll come back and say, we love your content, but as we put the rest of the program together, it just doesn't, you aren't going to work with that. And I'm like, okay, fine, you're lost next year. because
Right.
because they're going to need to what I heard next year. Yeah. And
That's
they come back sometimes. I mean, it's a function of how the world works. But you have to, as I say in the book, you have to keep throwing rocks on the water, and you create a ripple, and then
right.
you throw another handful of rocks on the water, and you create another set of ripples that push the original ripples out further. And you keep doing that over and over and over again. You never know quite where the ripples are going to go, but then they land. I had a great speaking engagement at the beginning of the year, out in California, with probably a $700 million enterprise, because they had been reading articles that I have been writing for publications. And they just, they thought I would be great. And when we talked, there was some good chemistry, and I got their situation, I got their circumstance. And the best compliment I got was after the session was over, and people were saying, oh my gosh, this was so great. I was standing in line to the bathroom. I had joined them at a professional basketball game that they invited me to join their team with. And I was standing in the line to go into the ladies' room. And one of the women behind me said, Jill, how long have you worked in our industry? You know us so well. And I'm laughing and going, well, maybe about a month. But, and I don't even work in your industry. It's just, I understand the circumstances. And, I had a very particular set of insight that I was looking for about who their customers were, who were the ultimate customer of the intermediaries they sell to, and then really use that as the prism to try and look at what was shifting and shaping, and how might that affect their ability to sell. And it really became very powerful, because they knew I understood it, and they knew I'd taken the time to really prepare. And that was, one of the reasons they hired me, was that I was going to customize the content unique to them. And it was such a great moment, because I made these people really think differently about their situation and their customers, and the ultimate customer that their goods would
Right.
go to. And so I just loved it. It was great. It was a great fun, and left some good value.
It sounds to me, based on what you're been saying, that this can be applied to like change management leadership in a way. It sounds like you're involved a lot in that, which is really, you got to go by the end of what, how the individuals are going to feel. Is that the right word? And that's why you have to look at from
Well,
different perspectives sometimes.
you know, I'm change management, but kind of at the beginning phase, in
Gotcha.
identifying what it is that
Gotcha.
has to be changed.
Okay.
Usually, when you're getting into very complex culture dynamics and things like that, usually that's when they bring in an organizational development consultant who's
Okay.
working on team building, and drilling down in some different ways there, in skill set stuff. I'm really more about, how do we what is it going to take for the enterprise to be viable, become viable, and remain viable in the world that they're really functioning and operating in. And
Right.
that, for me, includes really that deep dive on customer insight and market changes. And so often the part where I do get involved in in that change management element is where I'm brought in to either participate in implementation, strategic implementation, where, you know, I keep everybody honest about, you know, and I'm the cattle prod that kind of keeps the leadership team moving forward. Or I will present to the internal team and give them some of the deeper insights that we've already uncovered that have reset the strategy so that they're more informed about the why. And I think for a lot of people, that's why they resist change in organizations, because they don't understand, why do we have to do this? Why are we doing this? This is
Right.
stupid. And the minute you can kind of pull the curtain back for them, and sometimes it's a piece that I'll recommend to a client that we do, not because I'm looking to make more money, but because it's clear from the conversations that I've had within the organization that they'll go further and faster if we open up that insight. Now, of course, I can't tell everything, but we're able to give enough high level insight about the shifts and changes and the reasoning behind it, that people are much more willing to get on board, because they see, if we don't do this, we may not have a job. And so again, you get what you incentivize. Our goal is we want to keep you all
Right.
employed, and, you know, we want to grow our business finances so we can pay you competitively, we can provide competitive benefits, we can bring on the additional team members that you need to make your jobs easier and more impactful, or buy more equipment that will do the same. But we can't do that if we're not successful. So you know, there's a real synergy in business between how we all really, you know, it sounds trite to say you have to work together, but the organizations that are able to do that better than others are the ones who are often successful over a longer period of time. They not only share a common vision of the future and a common mission, but then they're able to articulate that and bring that back into how the reality of how they live the day-to-day existence that they provide and they're engaged in. And I think that's where this environment of everyone working remotely has created more challenges, is
Right.
because there's some disconnect between, you know, what it feels like to physically be in the same space as another person, and seeing their eyes, and, you know, feeling the energy that they're giving off, and, you know, all those different things that you kind of can get in a one-on-one or in a team setting, that's different, I think, than the virtual world. And so I know that there are many like me who look forward to the days when we can congregate together again.
Right.
And I'm much looking forward to that. I'm a people person, and, you know, it's
Me
just
too.
not the same looking at people through a camera.
Or my
Yeah.
husband says I get a lot more energy when I'm around people.
Hmm.
I mean, so
Yeah.
that's kind of why I'm like, oh yeah, let's do some Zoom. And I mean, I see my immediate family, but right, I haven't. Oh, gosh, like I said, my clients, they're all working remotely still, and they're trying to get it together. So I can't be.
Yeah.
We email each other a lot, but it's not the same, right? And
It's not. And I'm a hugger, so, you know, this is just killing me. I mean, it's just, you know, and you know, virtual hugs just don't work. But, you know, there's still, but for me, I still am intentional about trying to be connected. And it's not just in the virtual world, it's through
Mhm.
social media, it's through email, it's through private messaging,
Right.
it's through responding and reacting to the things that people put out. My niece, I joined Instagram. I have no idea how to use Instagram yet for business, but I joined it solely for the reason to be able to connect with, see what's going on with my 19-year-old niece. And so she hadn't posted for a while, and she posted the other day, and she had a picture of her with her friends. And so I was able to react in the moment, that, you know, to something that, you know, she was doing and enjoying, and, you know, and phone calls. And so I look at the whole array of communication as an opportunity for us to connect. And this whole business of Zoom and virtual, for me, is just, it's another tool. And,
Correct.
you know, I like it. You know, I like doing, you know, the group sessions. And, you know, it's tough when people just, you know, put their avatar up with their name on it.
I've
But,
done
you know,
that.
I'm guilty of that too sometimes, because sometimes The only thing I want is to listen. I
Mhm.
don't want to be visible. I don't want to be
Mhm.
engaged. I was on a webinar the other day. This was last week or the week before, and they had a break about a little over halfway through, but I'd had a client message me right as we were starting one of the exercises. It was a self-reflection exercise, and so I didn't do the exercise because my clients come first, and this was something, just a session I wanted to do. And so when I got off the call and I was trying to wrap up some other things, I just had my little picture and my name up, right? Well, they started calling on me. Well, now Jill, turn your camera back on. We'd like to have you do your debrief of what. I'm like, there's 25 people on this call that are, many of whom are visible to you. And I'm like, what are you doing? So I used the private message thing. I let it go for a minute. I didn't react. There is power in that, folks. And then I wrote with Zoom, you can do a private chat to an individual. And I private messaged the guy who was in charge of it. And I just said, look, I've been dealing with a client situation. I did not complete the exercise. Please, when I come back on visibly, do not out me and don't ask me to participate again, or
Right.
I'll exit the session. And it was unnecessary. And I still don't know why he decided he needed to call on me. It was super weird, um, and very disengaging. I mean, if the whole idea is you want to engage people, then you engage with the ones who have made it clear they're visibly participating. You can say things like, hey, for any of you who have your cameras off, we'd love to have you step back on. And then you can throw up a, hey Jill, hey Bridget, hey Mary, hey Mark, has anybody got something that you'd like to add to this? We'd really like to get your input. But the idea of trying to shame somebody into
Right.
freely participating, and this was about deep self-reflection. And I'm like, I have a client that's a prospective client that's on this session. I have another client who's on this session. I'm not going to do self-revealing things on your
Right.
session just because you want interactive participation.
Right.
And so, but I think that's with self-confidence comes the ability to say, I choose not to. And taking care of myself was a very powerful and an important thing. But more importantly, I took care of my client, and because their situation was pretty serious, and they needed the wisdom, and it was either that or jump off the call. And I
Right.
opted to stay on the call because I might still learn something. And then there are many where I'm just listening and taking notes, and because I'm in a reflecting phase right now, I'm not in an action phase, I'm not in an execution phase. And so for me, I ruminate about a lot of different pieces, and that's okay. And so for those of you who may be hosting sessions and webinars, recognize that not everyone is fully ready to engage, just because you want them to and
Right.
you want it to be interactive, especially if you're doing anything that requires reflection or ideas and new suggestions. It's important to make people feel safe. And that was, for me, that was a perfect example of someone who didn't make the setting safe. And I don't think he had any self-awareness that what he was doing was making people not feel safe. And that's absolutely why people weren't on the screen, and why nobody would share.
I got you.
And it
They
was
felt
like,
intimidated. Sounds like, yeah.
it wasn't intimidation.
What?
It was the nature of who the other people were that were on the session. And so, and he was asking people very personal questions. And, you need to, if you're going to be in a mastermind group and share, um, revealing insights about you or your business or your dreams for the future, um, then that needs to be done by acclamation. You need to have full and complete trust in the other
Right.
mastermind participants. And that wasn't what this was. This wasn't a mastermind. This was a webinar. And I think that the hosts missed that. And if they had just tweaked it a little bit more, it would have created a safer, more real place for people to be
Gotcha.
and to share. So yeah, it was an interesting experience, but trusted myself to say, no, I'm not participating, and I'm not turning my damn light back on until I'm comfortable. And, you know, I mean, I have nothing to prove to any of those people. And so, you know, I had a specific reason for why I was on that call. And, you know, it was, I got enough of what I wanted out of it, but there was also some good learning on what not to do.
Well, I've certainly learned a lot talking to you today. Again, I mean, we've talked before, a couple of times before, but I think you've got a lot of good examples to share with people, and you've got definitely a lot of confidence, and you definitely have a lot of resilience. And I want you to share with us where people can learn more about you. Is there a website?
Sure. Well, if they're interested in some of the consulting work that I do and what that really breaks down to, my business website is www.jcs-usa.com. So it's Johnson Consulting Services. So jcs-usa.com. I'm also on social media all over the place with Jill Johnson USA. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter. I've got confidence memes I post up on Twitter every day. And then
Oh, I love that.
I've got groups on Facebook as well. And then we've got a author's page on Amazon. And so all of the books and tools and resources are available on Amazon.com. So the primary book is Compounding Your Confidence. The new book that will be out soon is Career Confidence, the tip book. It's 80 to 100 word tips. There's 64 tips built into that book. And then the Career Confidence Workbook is already up on Amazon right now. We're just kind of being a little down low on sharing that with everybody. And I'm going to have other books. I've got probably 3 other books that are in process because I write for a while and then I get bored with that one and I go on to something else. Yeah, exactly. And there's tons of resources on my website, on the JCS-USA website. There's free white papers. There's links to other interviews and recordings that I've done. There's just all sorts of links. Also links to all the books are there as well. And so there's plenty of content that people can access for free if they want to get to know me a little bit better. And, you know, reach out and link with me on LinkedIn. I'm always looking to make new connections and, you know, happy to do that.
Well, I definitely appreciate your time. And what I'm going to do, in the description, I'll have the links included that you
Perfect.
discussed. So
Great.
if you guys are listening, you can also read in the description section. Thanks again, guys. And Jill, I hope you have a great rest of your Monday.
You as well. It was a pleasure to be on your podcast, Bridget. I've thoroughly enjoyed it and enjoying getting to know to you better and get to know your audience as well.
Thank you.